Welcome to another episode of the Trial Attorneys. Today we want to get into a particularly saddening issue today, and an issue that hits home for both of us, and in particular with me. I'll tell you in a second why that is. But the death of Southern University student Caleb Wilson in a fraternity-related incident. So we're going to talk about the ramifications about that. We're going to both really get into our backgrounds. We're both members of Divine Nine fraternities. We both have been for a long time, but we'll get into that. And we'll talk about our particular connection to all this. And I'll say, just for me, I'll start in that I'm an attorney, of course. I deal with civil and criminal matters, which are going to be ramifications. In this case, I have for years. I'm in a fraternity, Kappa Alpha Psi Fraternity Incorporated. And also, I crossed down in New Orleans, which is 45 minutes away from Southern. So I'm very familiar with the area, Baton Rouge and New Orleans and Louisiana as a whole. Very familiar.
So really you say cross, you mean you initiated and became a member?
Yes. Yes, I initiated and became a member of Kappa Alpha Psi Fraternity Incorporated.
Sound like a lawyer.
Yeah.
Initiated.
Yeah. So we're talking about Caleb Wilson, a 20-year-old junior at Southern University. He died on February 27, 2025, following an off-campus incident in Baton Rouge related to his fraternity, omegapsiphi Psi. You know, when I first heard about this, it really hit close to home to me. I joined the fraternity in 2001, fall of 2001. So it's been almost, was that 24 years for me? It'll be 25, next year. And so it's been a long time I've been a member of this fraternity. And a lot of times people, they always ask me, why? Some people have a lot of negative feelings about fraternities and Divine Nine and their purpose and what they're around for, especially when a horrible incident like this occurs. And so I'll just kind of explain that, So I grew up on the south side of Chicago in some neighborhoods that are rough. Roseland, Princeton Park. The areas where, growing up, I didn't see a lot of black professionals. I didn't really see any. And so it kind of irritates me when people try to compare a fraternity to a gang, right? Because I grew up around actual gang members. Fraternities are not gangs. I grew up around these gang members. And even to say on the other side of that, a lot of the cats that I grew up with in gangs or supposed gang members, they are decent, good human beings. They are human beings that have joined their organization, but some of the most solid people I've known, and some I still know to this day. But things were different back then. Generically, I got a pass because I did well in school and I was an athlete. So they, people I think it was a little bit more structure in that way. In that, I wasn't forced into a choice I didn't want to make because they recognized, this kid is doing something else. Don't be like me, in essence. But in saying that, I had the normal story. Father wasn't around, blah blah blah. And so my senior year of high school came around. I'm looking for scholarships. I'm like, man, I don't want to pay for college. A scholarship I applied for was a Chicago alumni chapter of Kappa Alpha Psi. I before that I had never heard. I never really, my sister's a Delta, and she used to talk about I didn't Delta Sigma Theta, and she gave us the opportunity to participate in a couple of things when she was in college, and that kind of opened my eyes to it. But I still didn't really pay it too much attention. So I applied for this scholarship. And Chicago alumni, they gave me a 4-year scholarship. They gave me money each year that I was in school. And
they gave you more than that.
Yeah.
They gave you an opportunity.
Absolutely. They gave me a great opportunity. And not only did I just get the money, but I also got mentorship. A lot of those older brothers who were, they would have been the age of my father at that time. They really pulled me in. They gave me a lot of guidance. Before that, I had never met black lawyers, doctors, engineers, entrepreneurs that have their own companies. I just hadn't been around black males in that way to really see it. I was amazed.
And a lot of times you didn't see that on television.
Nope, didn't see it on TV either. You didn't see it either way. So I was amazed to really meet these brothers, and they really pulled me in. You know, they were kind to me. They gave me advice. They helped me whenever I needed it, and that continued even through college. I would call and ask questions, and so that really sparked my interest in Kappa Alpha Psi. But it just wasn't because of that. Even though these men gave me the mentorship, I still didn't say, well, I'm just going to join just for that particular reason. I was still savvy enough to say, let me wait till I get down here to New Orleans. So I went to school Xavier and figure out the chapter down here, figure out these brothers who were down here. Let me research into the fraternity and research other fraternities for that matter. But for Kappa Alpha Psi, the mission statement and the aura of the fraternity really interested me. A fraternity that started in Indiana, 1911. Boy, must have been that was some crazy adversity I'm sure they had to go through.
And we're talking about a Big Ten campus.
Yes.
We're not talking about a historically black college.
Right.
We're talking about Midwest.
Exactly.
Indiana.
Ku Klux Klan land.
Well, the largest number of population of Klansmen in the state of Indiana.
Right, exactly. So I said, man, these are some, I'm looking at the founders. I mean, these are some strong brothers. And then what really resonated with me was Elder Watson Diggs, the dreamer. We call him the dreamer. And that really resonated with me because I consider myself a dreamer. I said, I'm this kid from, some of the worst neighborhoods on the south side of Chicago, but one day I'm going to make it.
Was he one of the founding?
Yes, one of the founding members of the fraternity. And that name really resonated with me. I said, man, I could really connect to that because here I am, a kid from the south side of Chicago who many people counted out. I said, no, you know what? No, I'm going to make it. Now here I am 25 years later, sitting next to me in my own law firm office, a successful career. And so that dream came to fruition because of my connections to the fraternity, the brotherhood I received in the fraternity, and everything positive I received about the fraternity. And it also just really interested me in that these organizations, Kappa Alpha Psi and all the Divine Nine organizations, were really created because we couldn't get into other organizations back then. They wouldn't let us into their groups, and we needed our own group. So instead of trying to beg for acceptance, we say, you know what, we're going to do our own thing. And when that happened, these organizations really, the goal and the aura of them was really to uplift, bring together, it's enrichment of the African American society. And I thought it would be really amazing to be a part of something that's been around since 1911. Right.
And that relationship didn't stop during college. It extended beyond college.
Absolutely.
Up to today.
Absolutely. It's still, I still participate and still have relationships. Me and my line brothers, 7 other guys that we were initiated at the same time, we still have a group text. We talk every day, 24 years, and we talk every single day and about something. Every day somebody brings up something. It's 24 years. I mean, they are my actual, they're not just my line brothers, they're actual brothers, at this point. I love those guys. So people still say, well, I don't understand. So you say all that sounds great. But then we have this, the hazing in sorts, the allegations of hazing. And what I say about that is, when I decided I wanted to become a member of the organization, I had an understanding that there was a process, right? But here's the thing for me. I crossed my senior year of college. So it wasn't for me, this wasn't a thing where I was looking for friends. I wasn't looking for an identity. I wasn't looking to try to gain popularity. I wasn't looking to try to get girls.
I've said that should have been the first one you said.
Right. I wasn't looking to try. I had done all those things myself. I had been student government, class vice president, leaders of organizations. I had done all that. Great. I did all those things. Sports. I did all of it. I was fine. But I made the choice that I really wanted to join the organization while I was still an undergrad. So I did it my senior year, which is unusual. You know, I do it my senior year, then basically leave the school the next year. But I really wanted to be part of the organization. And but in saying all that, I knew there was a process. I knew what I was walking into, and I knew, man, in Louisiana, you know, I've met some great brothers up in Chicago, and it's a lot of great chapters and really, really great brothers up here. But man, in Louisiana, man, it is rough. I don't know if it's something in the water or something, but I'm telling you, it is.
Maybe it's a Southern mentality.
Yeah, it is. But again, I knew that was coming. But the process to me was a necessary part of it because but it has to be done with a purpose. There is a purpose, and there is the mentality of you break somebody down and build them up. So I knew that was part of it, but I knew that the guys in my chapter, Beta Iota, down at Xavier, that they were good brothers. No one was out to cause me harm in that way, and everything was done with a purpose. And generically, what it really did was, after I finished, I felt like I could do anything. Exactly. I felt like I could run through a brick wall. I could conquer the world because I survived this difficult test.
Well, if anybody could do it, then it wouldn't be special.
Right.
What's the most difficult part of Navy SEAL training?
I don't know.
It's called Hell Week. Fraternities have Hell Week. Mm-hmm. And one of the first things they say, once they finish that Hell Week, they feel like they've climbed Mount Everest.
Yeah. And it's such, you know, you have that feeling, you feel like you could take over the world, and it is a euphoric type of feeling. Now, granted, the process is not an easy one, but I did it because I wanted to, and another thing too, a lot of thing that connects fraternity members is the idea that you're doing the same thing that someone did in 1927, and you're connected to that person because you can, even during everything, you're saying, man, how many great men before me did this, and I'm following literally behind this great person, this great man's footsteps, and everything, you know, you do it, but it's a lesson that comes with it. You do this, it's a lesson that comes with it. And maybe seven or eight, well, for us it was 8 strangers that were kind of, you know, you put together, but by the end of it, man, you are a family because you've been through this hard, difficult struggle together. And at the end of it, you're like, man, I could do anything. Whether, you know, and this is what I'm talking about with the gang thing and everything. No, fraternities, people out here, we're not killers. You know, these are college guys.
I think those are statements made by people who probably didn't go to college or who obviously don't understand it. I'm not surprised by that comment.
Yeah. So that, I mean, and I know people are going to get upset when they, you know, hear about, you know, or any comments we make here. But if you can make a negative comment about someone talking about your organization, someone you put so much time and effort in, you know, you're probably gonna get a response in kind. And so the fraternity to me has been a help. It's been a wonderful experience. It's helped me flourish. It's been key in my, I think, a key to my career, a key to my life, and it is something that I would do again. I have children. I have 2 sons, and I hope that, I don't know what's going to happen in the future, but of course I would want them to join my organization. It would be a great, great day for me. But in saying all that, so that is the purpose. That is the reason. And that is the idea, I think, of the fraternities. But here, something clearly went wrong.
I pledged in 1983, and back then it was only the Elite Eight or whatever.
Right.
We didn't, we didn't have anything called the Divine Nine.
Iota Phi.
Theta.
Yeah.
I mean, but the thing about it is that this rarely happens.
Right.
If you look at all the fraternities, sororities, I mean, this death is unfortunate.
Yeah.
And it rarely happens.
Yes.
And then the focus is on, and of course we feel really sorry for what had happened, and but they never focus on the accomplishments of all the other members and fraternities. That is all nullified by this really senseless event.
Right.
The death of a promising, educated young African American.
Yes.
So there are going to be some consequences. I guess we're going to talk about that a little bit later on.
Yeah. And so, I just want to, make that clear. Fraternities, I don't think, or at least me, I don't think I'm better than anybody else. Or I don't think that I stand above someone else. But what I do know is I love my fraternity. I think it is a wonderful organization. And
did I say I was a member of Phi Beta Sigma Fraternity Incorporated?
Nope.
Okay, I'm saying it now. I should have bought my jacket.
And I always think that's why I love doing this show with you, Ricky, because it's different perspectives from different, sort of periods, right?
Periods. Am I that?
But in the 80s, hazing was not illegal. You could do it out in the open. People used to use to march you on campus.
That's true.
And
Well, yeah, that was hazing.
Yeah.
That is right.
Yeah. That even in my time, you would get in big trouble if you did that.
Yeah.
So purpose of this conversation, Ricky's process was legal, and I was initiated. I joined the fraternity. Okay. But in all seriousness, like I said before, the process is. But I knew that coming in. I knew in Louisiana, and that's why this particularly caught my attention. I've had, we used to go to Baton Rouge, 45 minutes away from New Orleans. We saw, I know a lot of guys from Alpha Sig and New Iota, of course, is there.
Those are different chapters.
Yeah, those are different chapters
within the state, or different states.
Within the state.
Okay.
New Orleans has some Beta Gamma, of course, Beta Iota. There's just some great old chapters. My chapter is over 85 years old. It was one of the original. You could say a chapter is a subsection of the fraternity. There are different chapters in different places, and my chapter has been around for a long time. There's a lot of history, so it's a lot of pride with that within the fraternity. We're the $1 million noobs. That's they call us $1 million noobs, because we produce. Xavier produces.
And noops is kind of, what does that mean?
Well, it's a different designation. It's
like a nickname for
it's a nickname.
A member.
Yeah, for a member of the fraternity. And we Xavier in that chapter, we produced so many great black men that have contributed so much to this country, and we've gotten that nickname, and we really wanted to uphold that. And we have huge big parties. I always say, me and my line brothers always said some lines are good at stepping or cane work or whatever, but I said my line was really good at community service. that was our thing. It was community service. We weren't really great at that other kind of stuff, but we really dug into the community in New Orleans, and we were always out doing something. We're gonna get into what happened here. Ricky, you want to talk about your sort of
well, like I said, it was 1983. I think the VCR, the Betamax, just kicked in. That's how, we had the cord. It wasn't wireless. Yeah. That's how And we didn't even have computers in our dorms. None of that. But the thing about it is that what brings people close together, especially men? Adversity.
Yes.
If it's easy, there's no bonding.
Right.
So I'll be honest. There was hazing in 1983, but then there were lines and boundaries.
Right.
Like during Hell Week, there were certain rituals that connected you to the brothers who started it back in 1914. And that includes more hazing. Right. But we knew that going into it. But the whole thing about it is never, ever, ever did we ever accept or tolerating seriously hurting someone.
Right. Yeah.
Part of that initiation process is because that's something that that bounded all of us together. Right. And we joke about it to this day. And if there were times when we had brothers from other chapters who would come down on our pledges, and we saw that they had ill intent. Oh no.
Right. Yeah.
Oh no. That. So my thing was, they talk about paddles and stuff my thing was irritating the hell out of people. I tend to be very good at that.
Yeah, no,
and
I can attest.
To this day, they still, because I never touched them, but I knew mentally to mess with them.
Right.
So, but the thing is, they're lines. You don't cross that line.
Right.
Why would you?
Yeah.
To prove what? That doesn't make them a better person, a better student, a better professional.
No. And that's where we come here. And because one of the reasons I want to do this show in particular, because I'm looking at a lot of talk online, and a lot of people are just really coming down on fraternities and sororities, and I'm guessing there aren't members, and people are saying, well, the fraternities and sororities sure are quiet right now. They sure are quiet. I don't think anyone, it's not a matter of hiding for what happened, because this was wrong. But there is a other side to it, in that there is a purpose to the process. And if it's not being done with the purpose, then it's being done wrong. And that, I think that's what happened here with this young man, a 20-year-old junior at Southern. So this occurred on February 26, 2025. Caleb Wilson, and 8 other pledges were allegedly punched in the chest multiple times while wearing boxing gloves. I mean, sounds unusual.
Let Mike Tyson hit you in the chest with a boxing glove.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't, like you said, purpose. What's the purpose of that?
I don't know. Wilson collapsed after being struck 4 times, exhibited seizure-like symptoms, and became unresponsive. So then afterwards, fraternity members transported Wilson to a hospital, but misled medical staff, claiming he collapsed while playing basketball, and he was pronounced dead upon arrival.
And in legal terms, what is that? If you're misleading, it's almost like a consciousness of guilt.
Yes.
If you did something, if you saying, I'm innocent, it was an accident, then you mislead people. To mislead people, that means you're trying to hide something that you think was criminal.
Right. The sad part about all this is so 3 young men have been arrested so far in connection with this murder, and so far the charges are manslaughter and hazing. Now, the very unfortunate part, of course, is the loss of life. But now these 3 young men who are probably college graduates, who probably have careers, who maybe have started their own families, their lives will be forever changed and ruined now.
They're going to be thrown off of campus.
Yeah, they're going to be thrown off campus. They're going to be pariahs of their fraternity.
And imagine trying to apply to another college, and this comes up. You may not be accepted in another college.
Absolutely. And I've seen other members of my own fraternity whose lives have been ruined from being convicted of hazing in other states. They're professionals. They were in their careers, and then boom, something like this happens, and then not the death, but any allegation of hazing, and now they have a felony conviction, and their lives are ruined.
And think about it. This is done at a time when you're 18, 19, 20, 21 years old.
Yes.
You're going to be judged for the rest of your life by something stupid that you did when you were 18.
Yeah. Like I said, it was the manslaughter, criminal hazing, and then there's also going to be some civil liability here.
Can I ask you a real question on the criminal side?
Yeah.
One guy is accused of hitting one guy in the chest. There are 2 other guys, correct?
Yes.
They don't really say what they did.
No.
Okay. So we have cases where criminal cases, even murder cases, where people are charged by merely being present.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the defenses is merely being present is not enough. But us being former prosecutors, a lot of times they're charging anybody who's there to put pressure on them to get them to flip or testify against the major player.
Yeah. It's the duty of a theory of accountability, in essence. If you're present, it's the same thing. You tell your kids, if you're with your buddies, 3 buddies, and 2 or 3 of them, like, let's go rob a liquor store. You're like, well, I don't want to. Well, just come on and go with us. Sit in the car or just stand there. But your mere presence there, and you do nothing to stop it, or you don't separate yourself from it, could cause you problems.
Well, it causes you problems, but then there's the other burden of proof beyond a reasonable doubt. We've done cases where we did a robbery case. Yeah. Remember, at University of Illinois in Chicago, one guy robs him, and the other people just standing there, and it was not guilty because you're just standing there.
Yeah, yeah.
But they have more problems because they are part of the whole process.
Absolutely. They're participating in this process. We'll get into the criminal liability part of it. In that, so the charges, like I said, manslaughter and hazing. Now, hazing, we all know, people know the definition of hazing, generically, but it can be physical or even mental abuse of someone to.
Oh, I'm in trouble. Mental.
and in regards to joining initiation into
punching, kicking, the use of wooden paddles.
Yeah. And then the manslaughter comes, in essence, when someone dies, but it's not necessarily on purpose.
Yeah, it's not an intentional act. It's a reckless act.
Right. So in all states, hazing is not illegal. I don't believe hazing is illegal in all 50 states. It's definitely, of course, legal in Louisiana.
Or at least they don't have a law
that
makes it a crime.
Right, hazing itself.
Yeah.
In other states, they might they might make it aggravated battery or
simple battery.
Yeah, or something to that effect, as opposed to just the hazing. But the behavior itself, I'm sure, still won't be tolerated. So what we're going to end up having, though, is anybody. So I don't know what they were doing in that particular night. Of course, I'm not a member of that particular fraternity, and everybody's what they do. Things are going to be different.
Talking about that particular chapter? Oh,
no, it's Omega. They're Omegas.
That's right.
Yeah, different fraternity. So exactly what I wouldn't call it probably a ritual. Whatever they were doing that particular night, I can't say exactly, but clearly there were other people who were already members of the fraternity who were involved, and then there were the people who were being initiated who were there. Caleb Wilson was one of the ones who was being initiated.
A pledgee.
Right, pledgee. So the allegations that he was getting punched in the chest with boxing gloves. I've never heard this. This is unusual action. I don't.
Well, is that a possible defense? If I wanted to hurt him, I would have hit him without the glove.
Could be. Yeah.
Or maybe he had a pre-existing condition that I didn't know about.
Well, he did have a pre-existing condition. He had asthma, apparently, and so I think that's what exacerbated what happened. And that he had the asthma, and of course, that causes problems in regards to breathing. And you're gonna block that breathing, hitting it in the chest is gonna exacerbate what happens to him. So that's what happened.
I wonder if they knew he had asthma. No, I'm an asthmatic. I wonder if whether they knew he had asthma.
I don't know. I don't know if they did or they didn't. But that would seem, nowadays things it's just so different. What I mean nowadays in that because of technology, because of the internet, and because of access to information, you're expected to know more because we have access to more. Mm-hmm. Even back in 2001 for me, it's still, internet was still just kind of becoming a thing, and Googling things just kind of becoming a thing. But I don't know if I didn't fill out a medical questionnaire before,
They might have to start doing that.
Yeah,
now.
And, I would suggest might be something smart to do. Medical, questionnaire. Are you allergic? You're allergic to peanuts? Is I don't know. You might want to figure these things out.
Are you allergic to wooden paddles?
Yeah, right. Like, I got a doctor's note. Like,
what's amazing about the legal comparison? When I went to law school, I came out in 1990. If we wanted to research a case, we had to physically go in the library and what we call shepherds, see if that case. It took hours.
Yeah.
Now you just go to the computer, blah.
It's right there. Right there. Big difference. So I don't know what the Omega's response has been to this, but it seems like they're saying initially that it was an unsanctioned fraternity ritual, which of course it is unsanctioned because hazing. All fraternities, disavow hazing.
Well, why would they say that? It may be true, but then there may be a defense against liability towards the national organization by saying this is not sanctioned by us.
Right.
So if the family wants to sue the fraternity directly, they says, well, we didn't sanction that. Right. Matter of fact, we're against it, and they know it.
Right. So criminally, what always becomes important is your mental state, or we call it mens rea, your mental state. What we have to get inside someone's head to try to figure out what was going on in their mind when these things occurred. Because that's going to be the difference between, clearly, prosecutors down in Louisiana have already decided, okay, this wasn't premeditated murder. That no one planned it. No one planned it. No one calculated to murder someone. And yes, I would agree with that. That I'm sure these young men never had in their mind, we want to murder one of the pledgees. That just doesn't.
It makes no sense.
Makes no sense.
What's the purpose?
There wouldn't be one. So now we're on manslaughter. So then it's voluntary, involuntary. What's the difference, Ricky?
Well, voluntary means that not that you intentionally did it, but it was so reckless that you are accountable for the death.
Right.
Or I guess it's more of a mitigating. That's a mitigating element from intentional murder versus voluntary.
Right.
And let me switch that. Involuntary is more of the recklessness.
Yes, exactly. So this case, it seems as though they're going to be trying to prosecute in regards to involuntary manslaughter, and that the behavior was so reckless in order to cause his death. I think what may cause the behavior before, of course, is idiotic and horrible, but the behavior after is also going to become important.
Not the medical treatment.
No immediate medical attention, treatment. They changed his clothes, apparently. And then when they take him to the hospital, they tell hospital staff he's playing basketball. It's important for medical staff to know what actually happened to someone, to figure out how to treat someone. Yeah. And then there seemed to be because to do all that, change clothes, there's going to be time.
A lot of time.
And time is of the essence, of course, when you're dealing with someone's medical situation. If they would have jumped in action immediately, called an ambulance, or did something immediate, maybe this young man would still be around and be with his family.
I'm not trying to defend. I'm just making the legal arguments.
Sure.
But these are decisions made by 18, 19, 20-year-olds. And it seems like they panicked, versus, with trying to cover up a criminal act. And I think we got to separate out some of these people, because I think the one who's charged with the manslaughter, thank you. He wasn't a student at the time, correct?
No, Caleb McCrae, 23 years old, arrested on charges of manslaughter and criminal hazing. And he was the one that allegedly delivered the fatal punches to Wilson during the hazing event.
So this is a person who either graduated from that chapter or graduated from another chapter.
This former Southern University student.
Who came back.
Right.
So the liability to the national organization may be different.
Right.
But we have had always, and the thing about it, he's older and wiser. So one of the arguments for the prosecution is like, you're older and wiser.
Right.
You came back and you did this.
Well, the other two arrested, Kyle Thurman is 25, and Isaiah Smith is 28. They both faced felony criminal hazing charges. So they were out of beyond college age as well.
What were the other active members of the chapter doing at the time?
Unknown at this time. So these three have been arrested and charged so far. And active members of the chapter, I don't know if they were, it's unclear as of right now.
So they were just sitting there watching this going on?
Well, this is what I mean about, the reckless behavior. How could you see someone's in medical trauma, and everybody, whatever you're doing, you should snap out of it. And immediately the health of this young man becomes priority over anything else. His life. You don't want to try to cover up the death or cover up the health and well-being of this young man for any reason.
Yeah, and I know when I was down at the University of Illinois, when we had older brothers come down, we were still in control of the initiation.
Right.
I mean, you may be there, you may give advice, but we were in control.
Exactly.
So, we want to make sure that you don't do something, regardless of, you came before us, but you're not going to run this, and You're not going to hurt these
Exactly.
young men.
Exactly. So, I mean, that's also another positive aspect that can come from this, in that your young men who are in college learn to be leaders, in that you have your DP, or you have someone who's in charge of the process, basically, and that person is.
Oh, that's right. We used to, signals, we call him the dean of the line. Mm-hmm. We had a dean and an associate dean.
Yeah, that's what it is. DP stands for dean.
That person has the number one responsibility of protecting them, making sure they study in their grades. So I'm wondering, where was that person during all this process?
Right. So, and that person should be someone who's a leader, someone who's strong-willed, someone who is willing to do what's right, and to protect these young men. And usually it's someone that's in the chapter, so it's someone that's young as well, but they have to step up and take responsibility.
He's like the lawyer for the line.
Right. Right. He's a representative. But I don't know where that person was during this process, because these older brothers come in and
take over.
It could be a situation where this particular chapter, maybe they've had issues before. They didn't have anybody in the undergrad chapter at the time or something, and these are older guys from the chapter that came back and were trying to, get the chapter back going again. But it's just wrong. It's wrong. So now, I believe in this climate, and what I mean climate, in this day and age where people are so separated culturally, racially, religion, everyone's have their sides. I think these young men, they're going to try to make an example of them.
Absolutely.
They're going to try to make an example of them, because, and to a certain extent, it's like I said in the beginning of my conversation, I think my fraternity, I love it, but this is uncalled. This is deplorable. And now these three young men, they have, not only have they taken a life, but their lives are over.
Well, I mean,
I shouldn't say over, but they still have the opportunity to move forward, because they're still alive.
But they've probably been in a better position, but for this happening. But see, I look at it from a different point of view. You have young men who are in the chapter, who are in college. They're still trying to find themselves. I know when I was 18, I was smart, but I wasn't mature. Right. I wasn't, I didn't know a lot. Mm-hmm. I knew education. But then you have these older guys who already graduated, got 4 years under them, go out into the world, work 2-3 years, and then they come back. Those are the people that I have a problem with.
Yeah.
Because 18, I didn't know nothing at 18.
Yeah.
But when you're 25, they should know better.
Yeah. Another thing that too kind of bugs me about all this as a whole, just with fraternity and everything,
And we're not just picking on Omega Psi.
No, this is everybody.
That happens with Phi Beta Sigma.
Yeah, Kappa Alpha Psi, Alpha is everybody. So what bugs me, and I think, and sometimes chapter brothers and line brothers, they kind of tease me. They feel like I'm like an old man, even older man than I actually am.
You're old man.
Yeah, I know, older than I actually am, because I feel like a lot of people, especially a lot of younger guys, and it's our fault for not teaching them right. We've gotten away from what the purpose of the fraternities are. Man, all this getting into who's the toughest and all, that's nonsense.
Yeah.
It's brother. As soon as if I see somebody wearing these letters, I see somebody wearing yellow, man, we're brothers.
Yeah.
And I know that you went through something, whether you did, you in the fraternity, you're symbolizing that. So I'm going to help you because I know the idea is I know that we have common goals or a common connection. And so that should be enough for me.
Well, there's a social part of it, and there's a business part of it. And I think a lot of times now they spend, even after, I understand the undergrad experience, but now they spend so much, 99% of it across all fraternity sororities now, as I look at it, it's kind of the social part of it.
Yeah.
And it's more to these organizations than, what you guys call strolling.
Yeah.
We call it stepping, and performing. That's the early part of it. But I think what may have happened is when you have 18-year-olds and 19 and 20-year-olds, they probably give a little more deference to an older fraternity member who comes, and it's like the colonel comes in, and then you got the second lieutenant, and the colonel's doing something wrong. You hesitant to say, "Oh, Colonel, you can't do that," because they're deferring to them because they're older members.
Yeah, yeah, and and that's a lot of times, a lot of chapters, victims of their own success in that the members, they go on, they do great things, they kind of go on and do their thing. They come back for certain things, but they aren't able to always get the guidance. The younger members aren't always able to get the guidance that they need to be able to make these proper decisions. Things just sort of become watered down, and people do strange things.
Where you get older guys that come back and they're acting like they're still 1983. Like, dude, you're 60. What are you doing?
Yeah, what's going on?
Why are you involved like this?
Yeah.
Why are you out there, running around?
Yeah.
It's a point where, okay, you're a mature man. What value do you bring to the chapter now? Your experience, your professionalism, and say, hey, that shouldn't be done. Do it this way, blah, 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 blah. There are a lot of guys saying, oh, I'm an old head, I'm an old dog. Well, with that title comes a responsibility.
Absolutely.
And that's like, dude, this is how it should be done.
Absolutely. You should be passing on knowledge, job opportunities, experience. I've run into a lot of other, older brothers from other fraternities, my own fraternity, and they've given me, knowledge, experience, jobs. And that's the way it's supposed to go. You don't have to. Your participation, the way you participate, is going to change over time.
And the thing about the pledging part is less than 1% of it.
Exactly.
It's when you go out into the real world and you connect with other brothers, networking, doing community service that has an impact on our community. That's really what that's the young part of it is just the enjoyment part of it. The whole initiation part of it, the youthfulness. But then once you graduate, now you got to go about the business, the real business of the fraternity.
Right. Yeah. And it's, like I said, it's something that I think hopefully these fraternities and sororities, they continue. I would love for both of my sons to join Kappa Alpha Psi. It would be a great day for me. But systemically, there's a problem when this young man, who was also a member of the marching band down there in Southern, and marching bands are a big deal in Louisiana.
Huge, not in the North, well, just in the South, Florida, Louisiana,
big deal.
Howard, I don't view Virginia as the South, DC as the South, but Well, out of this tragedy, maybe some good will come out of it, because then these organizations need to reevaluate,
right,
and say, whoa, we've been kind of sleeping on this for a little bit. We assume that it was clear that this type of foolishness is not supposed to happen, and maybe there can be some correction.
Well, there's gonna have to be, and it's gonna come. These young men are gonna have a hard time in criminal court. The courts in Louisiana are really gonna try to make an example of them, as they should. Someone, you call someone's life here.
But about civilly.
Yeah, I was about to say, but even outside of that, we have civil liability. So they're going to be wrongful death claims by Caleb's Wilson's family. There's going to be negligence claims against fraternity chapter, the national organization, and possibly the university.
Possibly the university, exactly.
And third-party liability.
Well, it's going to be one against the university. You know why?
Why is that?
Deep pockets.
Yeah. You always go after the deepest pocket. So
people with the money.
There's going to be, we'll get into each one in a second, but third-party liability and vicarious liability, could the national fraternity be held responsible? So
vicarious means that they didn't directly cause the act, but you're linked to the act.
Right, absolutely. Mm-hmm. So the wrongful death claims by the family, it's obvious. Caleb Wilson's family is, I'm sure, they're going to sue everybody, because you send your child off to college in order to better themselves, in order for them to receive education, in order for them to be able to survive as a productive member of society, and to not to be murdered. So I'm sure his family is livid.
Yeah, because you can kind of understand. You get the call your kid was in a car accident,
right? But
not that he was killed by other students,
right? Yes,
that he called friends.
Yeah. I don't know if his family members are in fraternities or sororities, or if they, if he probably didn't. I don't know if he told his family what was really going on or how he's involved, but
probably not.
I
didn't tell my parents.
No, me neither.
My father would have hazed me.
Yeah. My mother probably would have got on a flight and came down there, but it's that is an obvious claim, wrongful death claims by the family. They're gonna, and it's just gonna involve who's gonna get pulled in and who's gonna be held liable. The chapter itself, down there. So the particular section at Southern University, and then of course Omega as a whole, and then of course the school. Now the school is gonna try to separate Southern University, a historically black university, one of the great ones, is going to try to distance themselves as much as possible from this.
We didn't have anything to do with that.
Yeah, they're going to, right, they're going to say, look, hazing, we've already said it's illegal. If we catch anybody on campus hazing, they're going to be ramifications. And they've already suspended the chapter from any activity at the school. So in essence, that chapter at Southern can't do anything.
It's dead for 5 to 10 years.
Right.
I've seen it.
Yeah.
When that happened, and some fraternities or sororities didn't have a chapter for one time it was 10 years.
Yeah. So that means that, so what's that about, 3 different classes of freshmen come and graduate from the school and don't have the opportunity to join that fraternity or sorority because the chapter is gone. So you can't join in undergrad. You got to wait until you get out of school and do it alumni, if that's what you want.
And I know a lot of people who joined another fraternity sorority because the one they really wanted to was not on the campus.
Yeah. And that happens. The national organization, I'm sure, too, is going to try to a certain extent separate themselves from it, and that because they're going to say, look, hazing is illegal. We've said hazing is illegal. So we didn't know exactly what they were what exactly was happening. What's going to get interested in this case is if this does go forward civilly and in their depositions, that means people are questioned, they're under oath. It's going to be rough.
I just thought about something. Sometimes you're going to have to figure out who was there to determine whether there's liability against the fraternity, because sometimes during these pledges, at least I know that The state director might be there.
Right.
The regional director, the Great Lakes region might be there.
Right.
So if that person's there and they saw this, there may be a link to liability on the national organization.
Right. It's gonna get messy in that someone died, so everyone's gonna have to come forward. Everyone's gonna have to be honest. Everyone's gonna have to take their part of the responsibility here. But people aren't always great at that.
Nope.
People aren't always great at that.
We've seen it.
Yeah. So I'm sure there's gonna be a lot of finger pointing.
We've done criminal cases where you have 5-6 co-defendants and nobody did nothing but point a finger at everybody else.
Right. Yep.
I was just there.
Yep. And that's what's going to happen here. And then also because this happened off campus and some type of what was it, like a property owned by I think a member of the fraternity as well, or was being rented by a member of the fraternity. And the owner, I think, of the property's already come out and say, look, I just rented the place. I don't know what's going on there. I have no idea. But the person renting the property, I think, was a member of the fraternity. So I'm sure they're going to try to drag him into it. Look, man, you don't know what's going on at your property?
Well, I mean, that helps the national organization because he's doing it privately.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Does the fraternity, national fraternity, have an obligation to really monitor what each chapter is doing?
Well, that's why you have state directors and chapter presidents and regionals. You should be monitoring the initiation of in these chapters.
Right. Yeah, and that's what it comes down to.
Because remember, they're paying dues to you.
Yeah.
They're paying state dues. They're paying national dues.
Yeah. And does the what responsibility does the university have itself? I remember in my school, our university, they were really strict about things. They really watched things at our school, and if they sniffed out anything, you were getting suspended, you were getting in trouble. So civilly, it's gonna be the civil part of it and criminal part of it. Both parts of this they're gonna be rough. Southern University has already suspended the Omegas, and they've halted all Greek life. Pledging.
What do you mean halted? No pledging?
Yeah, no pledging for the academic year. They're doing internal investigations and disciplinary hearings. So what's probably going to end up happening is that chapter is either going to get suspended or completely pulled, meaning that if the chapter is pulled, that means that chapter will no longer exist. They disappear.
Well, what my experience is, it starts off that way, but 10 years down the road, they'll reappear. But still, 10 years is a long time.
That's a long time. And then, fraternity is going to, of course, look at its anti-hazing policies and enforcement and sorts. So the fraternity is probably going to have to really, like you're saying, start showing up places with people in, regional or national directors and different leadership. We're probably going to have to start showing up places.
Or taking control over the whole initiation process.
Mm-hmm. And a lot of times for change to come, unfortunately, tragedy has to happen. And that's what happened here. All right, so thank you for tuning in to another show of the Trial Attorneys. Subscribe. If you like what you see here, subscribe to the channel. Comment. We love to see comments, hear comments about this. And thanks again, and join us for our next show.